Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. I've got a few things planned over the coming weeks. I plan to start working on the next build probably tomorrow. We're going to start designing some stuff. Right now, what I'm going to do is go over all of the tools that I have and what I'm using. Part of my goal of this channel is providing information for people who are working with limited resources, and I want to go over the things that I use, what I feel is the most important starting out, and what you should focus on. This is going to be one of the more bland videos, I feel like, but I hope it contains a lot of good information for any of you who are thinking about starting to do builds from scratch. Now, if you're doing kits or you've got some stuff that's pre-cut or pre-shaped, you might not need all of these tools. Some things may be a little bit more important than others if you're doing that. Everything I'm talking about here is specifically for builds that you are creating from the very beginning. I have another guitar that I'm going to be hopefully fixing up some things on and doing a finish to. So I'm not sure exactly when I'm going to start filming that, but that will be on the horizon as well. And then we're going to have another guitar build on top of the next one that I'm already starting to plan out. So I've got a lot of things in the works. Right now you'll probably only see about a video per week from me, but that should be ramping up as I get started on the next project. Thanks for watching, and if you too are also starting out as a builder and you've been using some of these tools, let me know in the comments below what you think. Are there other things that you would add? Are there things that you don't think are necessary? Or are there cheaper alternatives to the suggestions that I've made? Thanks for watching. Here's a general look at all of the tools that I am deeming absolutely necessary if you're going to build guitars from scratch. We're going to start with these small items and work our way across to some of the larger tools. First thing you're going to need are some drill bits. You're probably going to need more sizes than just what I've got there, but those are my good center point drill bits. But you're going to need a variety of ones, at least up to about 10 millimeters. For your Forstner bits, I've found you need to have at least those two. I have a 3/4 and a 7/8. The 7/8 seems to be pretty common for the input jack hole, and then you need something a little bit smaller to drill out a lot of material to get into the tighter spots, like when you're doing the pickup cavities. Those are the two that I've kind of found are absolutely necessary. Ideally you want some more than that, but you can get away with just those. You're going to need at least one long drill bit. I have my widest one pictured here, and you're going to need that for drilling access in your pickup cavities, to get the wiring through, to get into those from the control cavity. There's a variety of things that you're going to need a really long drill bit for. So ideally, I would say you need more than one. I like drilling up in sizes. I like to start with a small one and get a pilot hole going, make sure I'm in the right spot, and then I'll go to the bigger ones. But if you have one like that, that should be good. Since we are talking about doing this on a minimal budget, instead of putting my drill press on here, which I don't use a whole lot, but you do need to drill straight in certain scenarios, I've included this drill block, which is about $8, so you can drill straight. You don't need a drill press. You can use that. It works. Moving over here, I deem all of these items as essential. So the compass, if you're measuring things out, if you want to be precise, it is a great tool to make sure that everything's evenly spaced. It's only a few bucks, so I threw it on here. At first I didn't build guitars with it. I really think you need one if you want to be precise. Here we've got, I limited my rasps as much as possible, so I have one small round file there, and then I have one rasp that has a curved side and a flat side with different file types. I use this one the most, And you can probably get away with just one like this. Here we've got a hole punch. I have found that this is essential for marking my spots. It actually works better than a scratch owl, and it's only a few bucks. I have 2 chisels here. Ideally you want some that are a little bit bigger, but if you have these 2, so I think I've got a 1/4 inch there and a 1/2 inch. If you got those 2, you can get away with that. You may need to get sharpening materials as well. I've left those off the video. Alright, this item right here is a leveling beam. You need at least 1 leveling beam. You cannot really get away without one. I have ones of different lengths. So I had a 12-inch one, and that works. If you need to save some money, you can get a 12-inch leveling beam. It'll work. Personally, I use this one more. I believe this one is 16 inches. So I'd probably just recommend getting one of the lengths that you're probably going to use the most if you can only afford one. You're going to need good rulers, good straight edges. I've only got these 2 here. You're going to need ones that are longer. But I've got a little ruler there that has a center point, so you can measure out from there. This is absolutely essential. Even if it's not this size, even if it's bigger, having a center point ruler like this, you really need to have if you're going to be making your own templates, measuring things out, making sure you've got the exact center point. Absolutely essential. This ruler goes on top of your fretboard. The notches will go over the frets. You need one that will accommodate the scale length that you are building. This one does 25.5 and 24 3/4. I have other ones now because I'm building guitars with different scale lengths. You really need this to make sure your neck is straight before you start leveling it out. You cannot rely on like a straight edge on top of your frets. You need to make sure that the fretboard is straight, not the frets. You'll check the frets later, but the board needs to be flat. One other hand tool, if you're making it from scratch, are some wire cutters, strippers, whatever you want to call them. These are only about $5. You can buy better ones for more money, but these will work just fine. You need this if you're going to do the wiring yourself. One last thing with the bit, I've got my router bits right here. You have to have router bits to go along with your router, which I'm going to be talking about here in a second. You need ones with a bearing like this. I would argue you need a 1/2 inch, which is this one right here, and this one's 3/8. I would argue that you need at least both of those, and you need a 1/4 inch, which I have somewhere in there. The 1/4 inch does not have to have a bearing. You can use other means to keep your router straight when you're routing out the truss rod cavity, but you need a 1/4 inch as well. I have found if you have a table router, you can probably get away with just these, but I found this one necessary as well, where you have the bearing on the other end if your router does not go deep enough. If your router goes really deep, you can use just this bit to work your way down when you're routing out stuff. Mine does not go far enough for an entire body with the bearing, so I have to go part way down the body, and then I have to use this one to go the other way to finish it off. So it depends on what your router can do, on what type of bits that you're going to need, but you need to make sure that you can route the entire depth of the body with your bits and router, regardless of how you're doing it. So you may need this bit, you may not. It depends on what router you have. Speaking of routers, here's my router. There's the 1/4 inch bit that I mentioned. It's already in there. So this one, this router, will accept 1/4 inch bits,
because I have a little adapter in there, and it will also accept half-inch bits. It really doesn't matter. Most of the ones that you buy are probably going to be 1/4 inch. You want to make sure that your router can handle those. This particular router was about 60 bucks. It is not the best, but it has worked. It has done the job very well, so I can't complain. I want to invest more money to get a better router, but you don't need to. You just need something like this. Alright, the bandsaw, I was debating whether I should include that or not, and I believe I should. Some people might say you can use a jigsaw to cut your body, to cut your neck, to do those rough cuts. I guess that technically is true, but you run the risk of going too far off your line. Jigsaws are too imprecise. There's so many issues that I've had with them that having a bandsaw, I believe, is necessary if you are doing it from scratch. This is the best way to cut out your general body shape, your headstock shape, anything you need to remove a decent amount of material for. This is going to probably be one of your highest cost investments of any of the items. You're probably looking at spending $250 or something for a bandsaw that will work. I have this one on plywood, so it's nice and easy for me to move it around. I can just clamp it down wherever I want. I can move it out of the way. It is very portable, and you don't need anything bigger than this. You're going to need a drill. I do not recommend a drill like this. I recommend spending some money on a decent drill. This one here was like 20 bucks. It can get the job done if you have no other options, but you're going to be drilling so many different things. I recommend getting a decent drill. I have a decent drill. It's corded, and it cost somewhere around $100, $120. I would aim for that if you can, but if you can't, something like this, as long as it's going to fit all your drill bits, your Forstner bits, it will work. Some people might say that this random orbital sander does not need to go in this category. It is not an absolute necessity. I built a guitar without it, and I built guitars with it since. If you are doing any type of body shaping, any type of neck shaping, anything like that, it to me is absolutely essential. They're only about 30 or 40 bucks. There are so many advantages to it. I do not want to build anything without that tool being available. If you're going to do the wiring, you also need a soldering iron. You do not need to spend a lot of money on it. I actually have a $3 one that still works. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles that this does. This one's a bit nicer to work with, but go ahead and buy a super cheap one. You are also going to need clamps. How many? It really depends. If you're going to be gluing your neck and fretboard together on your own, I would say you need at least 8. I think I have got 8 and I could use some more. So the more clamps, the better. Alright, now we've got all these fun little items here. And believe it or not, these are probably going to be some of the most expensive things that you buy if you want to build guitars. We're going to start with these items down here. So these are fret wire cutters. You can buy them real cheap, like those right there. And you're going to have a very tough time cutting fret wire, especially stainless steel fret wire. You're not going to be able to do it with those little ones, actually. I tried. So I spent a decent amount of money on those, and those will cut through basically anything. You need something to crown your frets with. This is a fret crowning file. This was very cheap. This was like about 10 bucks. I think it works just fine. There are better files that cost more. There's different types of files. There's different ways you can crown frets. If you're looking to save money, buy something like this. I have no complaints with it. You can always fine tune with sandpaper or other tools. This little guy right here has smooth edges and then edges with your files. This is a fret dressing file. This was like 30 something dollars. It is absolutely essential to have something like that. If you can find it cheaper, great. You can do everything else on a guitar, but if you have frets that don't feel good, nobody's going to want to play it, including yourself. So these are nut files. I've actually, the numbers were too difficult to remember, so I just wrote what each side is for. And you really need to buy these files. You can probably buy them for under 30 bucks for a set. I think that's about what these were. You can also spend a lot of money. You can find sets for like 100 bucks. You do need to get a set of these. Other files like these, while sometimes necessary, do not work because you need to be precise. You want to make sure the nut slots are the correct width. So you can't just run the same size file across all of the nut slots. You need each of them to be precise, so you need files that will do that. Needle nose pliers. You use these for a variety of things, wiring as well. You can buy a pair for a couple bucks, so I'm including it here. You need a hammer that will work for installing frets. There are much better tools than this one, but since we're talking about doing this on a budget, you can probably get one for about 15 bucks. You're going to need Allen wrenches of different sizes for the truss rod, for the saddle height, all types of different things. Sometimes you'll have Allen wrenches that are included with items that you buy, such as a bridge, but you're going to need different sizes if you're going to be making guitars on a regular basis. That is a fret rocker. You're going to need that to make sure your frets are nice and flat. You can actually buy those in sets. So sometimes you can buy sets that include multiple tools all in one. I think that was included with the ruler that you use to make sure your neck is nice and straight. So save some money by getting a package deal. That little guy right there is to measure how deep you want your frets to go, your fret slots, if you're cutting them yourself. Even if you are not cutting them yourself, you need something like that. That way, if you have a pre-cut fretboard, you're going to be sanding it down. It's going to change the depth as you're doing that. You need to make sure they're deep enough for your fret wire. So regardless of how you're doing that, unless you're buying a fretboard with frets already installed, you got to have a little gauge like that. And it has different radius. It can check for different radiuses. So this one can pretty much cover any type of depth slot that you need, that you're going to be using. So one little tool like that is all you need. That one was like 10 bucks. I think you can probably find them cheaper. You need something to bevel your frets. You do not have to have one like this where it's already at an angle. You can use a file like this and just do it at an angle yourself. It is a little bit more risky to do that. You need to make sure that you're doing it at the correct angle. The angle is already built in. This one was only about 15 bucks. This one was probably also about 15 bucks. I would like to get nicer files, but I am also on a budget, so later on down the line I will. These will work just fine. This is a fret slotting saw, and it was about $25. You're gonna need something that is the correct width. You might be able to find a different saw, a cheap saw, but you need something that's gonna cut the slots very nice. These files were only about $3. You're gonna use them for all kinds of touching up, not just with the frets, but also with other little parts of the guitar. So $3, I've used these countless times, definitely included in this. Alright, welcome to this part of the video where we're going to talk about things that you probably should have and that are borderline necessities, but you can get away without having these tools. We're going to start with the most important and also the most expensive one, which is a belt sander / spindle sander. After buying this item, I determined that it is probably one of the most important time-saving tools that you can buy for building guitars. Now, you can hand sand things, you can find other ways to do a lot of this stuff, but the amount of time that you are saving by having one of these makes it almost an absolute necessity unless you have unlimited time and your hand does not get tired very quickly. This one, you can put a belt on there, or you can do those different spindles, so it has a lot of versatility. You use it for the neck, you use it for the body, you use it for basically any piece of wood that you are working with. This is going to come in handy. You can angle the table there if you want to. I find I don't use that very often, but I use this tool so much that I wanted to put it in the necessities, but technically it is not. You can build guitars without it. Now, do you want to build guitars without it? Once again, I've got this on plywood, so you can easily clamp it down and then move it out of the way if you are working in a limited space. Here we've got a little rotary tool, like a Dremel. You don't absolutely need one of these, but you can buy something like this for $10. It is not the greatest tool, but it works just fine. You can put all kinds of different attachments on there. If you're going to be engraving anything, you're probably going to need something like this. For the price, I would rule that it's almost a necessity if you can swing $10, and then maybe another $10 for all the attachments that you need. Here's some calipers. I've found that you do not have to have calipers. This center point ruler is more important. The compass is more important. Yeah, I use this for a lot of things, but you don't absolutely need to have it. You can still be precise with those other items if you don't have calipers. This is a miter box. This helps keep your saw straight, and this is extremely important for cutting frets. I've done it without a miter box. I've used a tape method, which I showed on the last build video, that you can do. So you don't have to have this, but you can usually get it real cheap. I mean, this came with one of the saws I bought, and it works very well. So $15 for a cheap saw and the miter box, highly recommended. And here we've got an angle grinder. This one cost me $10. You can probably find them easily under $50. That bit actually cost more than the angle grinder did. That's really the only one that I use for building guitars. There are different ones available, but this is a great carving tool. So if you're willing to spend about $30 for the bit and an angle grinder, you should definitely do it. You can do the gut cut, as I like to call them, real quick with something like this. So instead of spending 3 or 4 hours rasping away with something and then sanding and all of that, if you've got an angle grinder, you get that done in 3 minutes and then start your sanding process.